How are we all doing? I wanted to make a video on Strive matchups. This has been something I've kind of had cooking in my head for a sec, but I finally decided to make a video on it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm sorry if I stutter a bit, or, kind of get lost in thought, but I don't really know where to start. I kind of just press record and I want to just speak my thoughts like always. Let's about matchups in general. What defies a matchup? To first start basing your matchups, I believe it all stems from two players that are around or at equal skill playing a first to 10. What would the score be between these two players, right? Equal skill at the top level, high level, whatever you want to call it. What's the outcome? And I believe it separates into different tiers, and those are 5-5, 6-4, 7-3, 8-2, 9-1, and 10-0. Right? I don't even know where to start. We're gonna start with 5-5, but first I kind of want to ramble on a bit. I think in Strive, a lot of people do not like to lab. I think that a lot of people don't know the answers their character has for certain situations. Whether you have a low profile like Eno or Sin to go under certain moves, maybe abusing a normal, you should be abusing more like low profile 2K or I guess a DLC 2K. A lot of knowledge checks go into it, right? Not labbing. Round start is so big in Strive, not labbing your round starts. So like I said, things you should be doing more. I guess that kind of stems to matchup knowledge and knowledge checks, like I've said. Just kind of stuff like that. I think that characters in this game are so unique and diverse that it seems like every character has an answer for something, especially with the implementation of new moves and new additions to moves. I feel like most characters can at least do something, right? And if not, obviously the matchup turns pretty bad, but I don't think it's impossible. I don't think any matchup in this game is impossible. There will be a video I'll be putting out later in time that will kind of go over that, but I think this is the closest that the top tiers like Johnny and Nago, for example, have been to the other parts of the cast in terms of strength. I don't think it's like the Ram, Nago, Happy Chaos meta where those characters like 20 tiers above everyone else, right? So yeah, it's not unwinnable. A lot of people don't like to admit their shortcomings. Right, for example, if you're fighting a zoner player or a zoner character, and you as a player love to mash buttons, press buttons, you just like to go and rush down, right? But sometimes you have to admit, like, it's just not your turn. It's not your turn to do something. You kind of have to just sit and wait and block, right? Just that doesn't mean the match was bad. It's more of a player thing. You have to realize if you are someone that fits the description of what I just said, and you're fighting and you're going against that and you're losing every time, it's not a matchup thing, it's a player thing, right? And I think a lot of people just don't like to admit that. They're like, oh man, when I'm losing, it must be bad, right? It doesn't always work like that. You have to know what you're good at and what you're not, and obviously matchup charts at the end of the day are opinion based. They just are, right? One thing that could get in the way as well when talking about matchups is character hate, right? If you just despise a character, like you hate Happy Chaos for all he's done, for what he used to do to your character back in season 1 when he 8-2'd them or 7-3'd them, whatever you thought, right? You can't get over it, right? And you just say, oh well, it could be an even matchup. My character could lose that Happy Chaos or could beat Happy Chaos, but because I hate him, I'm gonna just say like it's even or my character loses, right? A lot of character hate, and I think this is the thing I see commonly. I get sent a lot of stuff. I have a lot of people send me a lot of things, especially in the Strive community, especially like on Twitter. You just have to, dude. I see it all. Like even if you don't think I know you, I've probably seen your matchup chart. I saw a thing where a Ram player the other day said that Ram 8.5 to 1.5 the whole cast, basically. Right? And keep in mind, this individual did not actually main Ram. Right? So there's a lot of bizarre things out there, but like I said, it's all opinion based. Character hate is one thing that gets in the way. You have to know if you're not the strongest. I've already said, but it equals down to two players that are equal skill playing the matchup, right? Equal knowledge, equal skill, and what would that score be? So you have to realize if you're not in a position to actually, obviously, you can give your opinion because they're opinion based, like I said, but the universal opinion will obviously not be from like a floor 8 player said that the match was bad after fighting like Gobo, right? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, and next I kind of want to ramble on about why I don't even think there's bad matchups in Strive right now. I think that the Obviously, this is a high damage game, but on top of that, there are a lot of protections. And what I mean by this is you have FD, right? And stand FD obviously causes more of a pushback. So you have the difference in whether you're crouching or standing FD, right? You have deflect shield, which is really good if you know how to use it. I think this falls into you need to lab category because those are things you want to deflect shield, and what also falls into the knowledge check you need to lab category, or sorry, not knowledge check, but just the you need to lab category is IB and IBFD. So obviously in this game, IB, so you know, essentially no pushback. If your character, I've said this before in my Sin guide, but if your character has stubby or P normals, you need to know how to IB, because if your character is just weak to spacing traps, then, you know, you're just going to get spacing trap most of the time. But if you're able to IB or IBFD to push them out to be able to create space and get that, you know, be able to, you know, get some breathing room or keep them a little closer when they end their pressure so you can actually, you know, enforce something, then, you know, you need to know when or how to do that. So, you know, you, like I've said, let's start. You have IB, IBFD, deflect shield, on hit burst. Did I already say FD? FD. And on top of that, you have YRC. Right? And not only, like, you know, YRC is obviously just a good situation. Most characters have, it varies. Some characters have a really broken post-YRC situation, others not so good. But it still exists, right? So yeah, kind of want to just talk about those. Those are huge. It stops steamroll. Obviously in this game you have burst, or sorry, not burst, sorry, risk. Risk is obviously a pain, and, you know, obviously the more risk you have when you get hit, the more damage will be inflicted on you. But, you know, there's just so many ways to get around it. And in a game that it feels like you have resources a lot of the times, it just feels right to be able to use them on defense. The safe option. I think that's enough rambling though. Let's get into the actual tiers of matchups and kind of relate them to Strive. You know, you have the 5-5, which is the equal matchups, right? No advantage for one or the other character. Just two characters playing the game. It's pretty much it. I mean, can't really say much about that. It's just, you know, it's literally just two characters playing the game. You have your one thing that's pretty popular, especially amongst Strive players, is saying 0.5. You might see a Strive tier list or a matchup chart where it's 5.5 winning or 5.5 losing for my character, right? This essentially means that it's not big enough to actually say it's 6-4, but it doesn't feel even. Like, this character has the very slight advantage, or their character is just a little stronger than mine. So I'm not gonna say it's 6-4. It's not Doom, but it's definitely not exactly even Steven, right? My thoughts on this are, you know, another way to say it, 5.5. It's like even losing, and then even winning. I think at the end of the day, it just all dials down to it's even. I don't think there's really a need to do the 0.5s like that. Yeah, that's kind of just to get over. I know some people might be confused, so there's that. Then you have the 6-4s. So 6-4s are just a favorable matchup for the character that obviously wins it. The disadvantaged character can still win, but it will take a little difficulty, but not huge, not impossible. It's not over. It's not Jover. It's just a little hard. You know, this is, I'm sure there's a lot of 6-4s in this game. A lot of 6-4s. You know, one of the things I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but one of the things I believe I said earlier was there's so many, the characters are so diverse in this game. So diverse. You have characters like Zato and Asuka, and you have characters that are, you know, said to be simple but still have so much depth in them, right? You know, maybe Soul, or, you know, Kai, or, you know, even Sin, for example, right? Pretty, like, straightforward, but there's so many different ways to play them, and, you know, the way they approach matchups and the way they use their tools in matchups is unlike things you've seen before. It's truly amazing that, you know, this game has so many cool characters that do different things and function differently. This is so much different from a game like Granblue, for example, where it feels like most characters are literally doing the same thing, but some just do it a little better than others, right? To the point where you get like super Shotos. It feels like everyone in Granblue is a Shoto. They all do the same. They all have a Lariat, they all have a Fireball, they all, you know, whatever, right? And they're the same. They just look different. You know, games like that, modern games like Strive and Granblue matchups, just there's so many protections, and, you know, like, you know, you in Granblue you have like Brave Counter and whatnot, and it's more matchups in that game are more determined from a perspective of like, well, you know, our character's the same, but his tools are just better than mine. But I have the same tools, but mine are just worse, and he is just in a more favorable spot. He has to take less risk due to his tools being better, right? So it just comes out to like things like, you know, basically just categories of like risk reward, which is of course always going to be huge when discussing matchups. But yeah, let me get back to it. 6'4", I've already said, it's bad, but not doom. This is probably the most popular one. This, I think 6'4" can also be associated with just losing. Like I said, there's even like the slight losing, and then there's like, and then losing, which is probably where you'd put like the 6'4" category. And then after 6'4", you have the 7'3". So in my opinion, 7'3" is just like, I think these do exist. I think they're less common in Strive than ever before, but 7'3" is a matchup where it's obviously favorable for the character with the advantage. Very favorable, actually. The winning character does not have to take many risks to win, but can still lose by a few key reads by the opponent. This is a matchup that it's beyond just, you know, this is a matchup where it's obviously it's hard to win, right? It's now we're getting past the difficulty point of, okay, it's not huge difficulty to now we're at, oh my gosh, this is so hard to win, right? Very hard difficulty. If you can think of a 7'3" that your character has had, like to name a couple of really bad Strive matchups that I can think of off the top of my head, right? You've had like Chip Biken in the past, right? Nago Leo, right, in the past, where Nago beat Leo, and obviously Biken beat Chip back then, and you know, you had like Sin Nago when Sin was on release, when Sin was terrible. You know, you had Faust Ram, Bridget Gold Lewis in the past, before Wild the Soul came to the game. You know, you had Milia Leo, right? You had Johnny Happy Chaos in season 3, right? Just some really bad matchups that you know, Zato Gold Lewis, for example, right? Stuff like that where it's just like it takes so much effort, and it's probably better to find a secondary for it. And I think that's the standard. I think it's, okay, this matchup is bad that if, you know, I'm actually trying to win, you know, I'm a tournament player where it actually, you know, actually matters, right? Or I want to take this game to a higher level. I think it's best if I just play a secondary, right? It starts becoming 6'4s are still pretty skillful, and the better player can still win due to the difficulty not being like, you know, that hard. But you know, when you get in this category, it starts falling out of your hands. The higher this goes, the less options the player can do as a player. This is the, like I said, this is the classic. This is what I believe most Strive players think they have, which is, you know, a 7'3. I'm curious to hear if you guys think your character has any 7'3s, or, you know, you've played a 7'3 in this game. But let's move on. You know, you have, after that, you have the 8'2s, right? The 8'2s, man. Okay, so 8'2 is, when I imagine 8'2, it's like, you know, you think of like Cammy Sagat, right? Like stuff like that. You think of Zod, right? From, you know, back then. Stuff like that is what most people consider 8'2. You could argue that those are actually 9'1s, but for example, for the most part, they're 8'2s. I think in this game, there are not 8'2s. I do think there are a couple 7'3s. I think like Dizzy has a couple 7'3s. I think Zato might have like a couple, but pretty much just the worst characters. It's not like a universal thing. It's especially in modern fighting games, like I said, it's pretty uncommon. But I think 7'3s do exist. I think now, like I said, is the time where those are least common. In season 4, if you generally think that your character has an 8'2, I want you to think of what Happy Chaos was doing to characters back in the day. In season 1, early season 2, mid season 2, really think about what Happy Chaos was doing to your character. If you played Nago, if you played, oh my gosh, the list goes on and on. If you played Jacko, if you played Testament, if you played Nago, if you played Zato, Eno, Faust, Axel, Pot, just really think about what that character was doing to your character, right? This is where counterplay starts, just like I've said, counterplay and what the player can do just starts falling out of your hands, and there's pretty much no answers. I think that with an 8'2, that the character has one dominating or maybe two dominating strategies that just invalidate, or let me not use the word invalidate, but just take the game off your hands, right? Just that character can just keep looping the one strategy. For example, let me name a few. So Happy Chaos Steady Aim back then, if you're like, there's literally nothing. It's so dominant. The reward is so big that, it's not one of the things where, okay, well, it's really good, but it tickles me to death to the point where, like, if I get hit, knowing my character, once I get in, I'm still just gonna win, right? No, it's, oh my, okay, this strategy is so good. The damage output, the whatever he's doing is just so good that there's nothing I can do. It's so dominant. I think with this is also like, for example, my character like, imagine if current Johnny, like, Misfinder was just like, it hit low profiles, it hit everywhere in the sky, it was plus on block, or like barely even minus, and your character just had no answer to outrange that move, right? Like, that's essentially what I'm referring to. Like, there's just nothing you can do. And it's pretty crazy to think that there's even worse matchups than that. Then you have the 9-1s where it's basically, there's essentially no chance of winning. And then the 10-0, which is, there's no chance. Like, it's impossible. It's the worst matchup in fighting game history, which obviously Strive has never had a 10-0, right? Even with Happy Chaos, there's no 10-0s. Matchup numbers are off. I mean, again, it's opinion based. They're up for debate, but I do believe there is actual value when discussing this. I would love to, the matchup charts that I haven't seen, I'd love to see everyone's, to be honest. But I've kind of rambled on. I've said why I don't think their matchups could be that bad. I kind of went over the tiers of matchups. I think one thing I could have said around the 7-3 is, I think in my opinion, when talking about like a 7-3, because again, it's so commonly heard by people that play this game, it's, forgive me again if I've already said this, but when talking about 7-3, it's the character's kit that you're playing. Like, if your character loses the 7-3, it's your character's kit just does not function. Like, you can't use what the devs balance your character around in the matchup. For example, back then, if you played Anchi and you couldn't use spin was just, imagine that part of your kit, that move, that special move, or that normal was just pulled out of the game. You couldn't press it, right? It had no use. Then we start getting into the conversations of, okay, now it's your kit is being invalidated. Like, certain parts of your kit is just being shut out, right? And that's what I think makes a 7-3 matchup. So I think it's very important to keep in mind, obviously the worst matchups are just the dominant strategies being looped over and over again, like Happy Chaos Steady Aim zoning, for example, Nago being unkillable while out risk rewarding the whole cast, right? With the best neutral and the best offense, and some things that also make bad matchups could be like the risk reward being so skewed in like one character's favor that they just, even if they're wrong, they're right, for example, right? Like, you're healing them by hitting them. You're giving back resources, right? There's no real scare factor. You can't, you can take 20% off this interaction, but if he hits you, he's taking 70, right? And I think risk reward scares a lot of people, and it scares me too. But I think a lot of times, if every matchup, I think a good thing to talk about, or discuss, or even think about when making matchup charts is, if risk reward was truly the end all be all of every matchups, then the bigger bodies that do the most damage should hypothetically win every single matchup, right? But it doesn't work out that way, right? Risk reward is definitely a factor when discussing a matchup, but I don't think it's the end all, whatever. There's been conversations of Gold Lewis losing to Milia before. You've seen, Bridget beating Gold Lewis. You've seen Pot losing a bunch of characters. You've seen Nago players say that that he loses to some characters, right? Yeah, there's other factors that go into it. The neutral being really hard, right? As someone that's played Zato, that is definitely something that I've said a lot and have thought about a lot when making matchup charts, right? Neutral, the difference in conversions, how one character can deal with one of your character's most common options, whether it's a block string ender or a neutral poke, how it gets erased by another character's move, whether it's a low profile, whether it's a extremely weird punish that is very character specific, right? Things like that. There's also the things of your character is just so bad that they don't work right? So they kind of just lose, right? There's obviously that, but yeah, I think there's just so many things that go into matchups, and luckily in Strive we have so many different characters and so many cool different moves that do different things that it's very cool and to see how matchups are played out. But at the end of the day, one of my final words will be that you need to lab what your character can and cannot do, because a lot of moves have different ways of being used in this game, and I've learned that firsthand. So yeah, I'm curious. I want to hear everyone's thoughts on matchups that you've played, whether it's been so good for you, so bad for you, the worst. If you've played a 7-3, and what are they? Maybe the most fun matchup you've played. I don't know if you've played anything worse than a 7-3. But yeah, that's all. That's it for me. Thank you everyone for watching. I will put the Discord links again in the comments in the description if you want to go check it out. And thank you. Thank you everyone for watching. Until next time.